poem 13 by Caleb Femi. As we already mentioned at the beginning, there's a few connotations of 13, so hopefully you got these down. But first we have the beginning of being a teenager. So we have the start of being a teenager, which of course is this kind of in-between time of being a child and an adult. And sometimes the way that this can be quite confusing. It's also a number that's quite unlucky as well. Sometimes I think that you might read this poem and go, well, you were unlucky, but of course it's deeper than that. Like, it's not about luck, it's about the way the system works. And again, historically, I put here historically, in some cultures, 13 was the beginning of becoming an adult. Okay. Now, of course, the poem is about Caleb Femi, who is from Nigeria. He's black, and this is set in Peckham, although the location is kind of ambiguous, but that is where he grew up and where he's from. There's also a theory that comes with young black men that we call adultification, which is where black men are often seen as being adults when they're still children, whereas white boys are seen as being children for much longer. So it deals with a lot of these issues, this poem. On the surface, it's incredibly simple story, but when you get into the depth of it, it's very complicated. There's a number of different voices, and there's a number of different ideas about how you see yourself, and how you see yourself as a person of a certain race. Let's begin. You will be 4 minutes from home when you are cornered by an officer who will tell you of a robbery 40 minutes ago in the area. Right, let's look at a few of these numbers, right? So first of all, this. Now, it's very unusual. We call this second person. So normally you'd expect it to be, I was 4 minutes away from home, right? Notice it is second person. It is also the future tense, right? You will be. Very unusual for poetry. You will be 4 minutes from home. So there's an idea here that this hasn't happened yet. But the word will has a certainty to it, right? So it's saying that this will happen. It is a certainty that at some point you will be in this situation. So it is both about the past and the future. Okay, I'm going to put the future here as well. You will be 4 minutes from home. 4 minutes just simply very close, right? Now home in this sense is about safety, right? You've got the home versus the streets. So the streets are not safe. Your home is safe. So you'll be very, very near your home, 4 minutes away from home. Okay? You've almost made it when you'll be cornered by an officer. Now again, cornered here is a sense of being trapped. Okay? There's no escape. By an officer. Okay? A policeman. Officer makes it sound very intimidating, I would say, right? And quite formal. Who will tell you of a robbery 40 minutes ago in the area. Okay, notice how vague this is, right? So 40 minutes ago is quite a while ago, you'd argue. So it's very vague. You fit the description of a man. You'll laugh. 13, you'll tell him. You're 13. So the officer sees him as a man, right? So this is the officer's view. And this is his view, right? 13 is a child. But the idea, of course, is that 13 is an ambiguous age, right? He sees himself as a kid, the officer sees him as a man. And of course he laughs. And the laughing is never going to go down well, is it, in that kind of situation? So there's a sense here that this is a natural response that is going to potentially lead to violence. You'll be patted on the shoulder, then by another Fed. Okay, Fed is slang for police. So again, there's an idea that whenever you refer to people by their slang, it means that they are inaccessible to you, right? It's American slang for the federal government, the federal police. The American police have guns. So there's a sense here that the slang points towards a greater violence and power than British police do. British police don't carry guns, but American police do. Fed is an American cop, You'll be patted on the shoulder. Okay. Now again, patted has two meanings. So the first one can be something quite aggressive, like to be patted down, but it could also be reassuring. And I think this is interesting because to be patted on the shoulder, patting is quite a soft word. Now I think it's quite interesting because the patting on the shoulder takes Caleb Fenwick back into his past. You're patted on the shoulder then by another Fed whose face takes you back to Gloucester Primary School. Okay, so we're talking about being a little kid. So he goes into the past. So again, what we've got here is we've got the future and the past. So this will happen in the future, and this did happen in the past, right? Gloucester Primary School, a Wednesday assembly about being little stars. Okay. Now again, why Wednesday? Why not Thursday? Why not Tuesday? I think it's because, again, it's something that is the middle of the week. It's just very normal, right? Notice here, being little stars in italics. So this is the voice of the police. So the police are giving an assembly to the kids where they're saying to them, you can be little stars. Now, of course, this is a metaphor. What does a star represent? Okay, so a star, I'm going to put this down here next to police, right? So a star, so police talking. A star is bright. A star burns. Okay, stars are synonymous with wishes and dreams. So the police are going into the school and saying to little kids, you can be anything you want to be, right? You can be something bright and amazing. Okay, this is all about the idea of having aspiration, right? That you can be something great. This same officer had a horizon in the east. Okay, so horizon in the east. Now the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So this is a reference to the sunrise. So this police came in and they inspired him. They said, you can be something great. And he was inspired by that conversation. He saw in that police officer dawn rising, something positive coming into his world. Of this, his smile when he told your class that you were all supernovas. Okay, a supernova is the biggest and brightest stars. Okay, when a sun goes through its cycle, it becomes a supernova, right? Super, really, really big source of light. Okay. So that's the past, right? Future. Okay, future, and this here is the past. Okay. You will show the warmth of your teeth. Okay. So again, smiling. So you're mimicking the officer's smile here, right? So you're doing the same things that you're taught to do. You will show the white of your teeth, the warmth of your teeth. Praying, he remembers the heat of your supernova. So there's almost here the desperation, right? Please remember me, right? I'm not a bad person. You knew me as a little kid. Praying, he remembers the heat of your supernova. He will see you powerless, plump. Interesting word, we'll circle that for a second. You will watch the two men cast lots for your organs. Now this line I find particularly horrible. So to cast lots means essentially to draw straws, to decide who is going to get your organs. Now that could be a reference to violence. So like who is going to beat him up and destroy, damage his heart and his liver. There's an idea about sort of his internals, right? These men are going to tear me apart, and they're basically deciding who's going to be the one that gets to like smash me open and hurt and destroy me. The word plump's really interesting. So I get the image of something plump. It's almost like being like an animal ready for slaughter, like a pig or a turkey or a chicken, that when it gets plump and big enough, then you can destroy it and eat it. there's definitely an idea here about sort of predator versus prey in this part of the poem. Don't you remember me? You will ask. You gave a talk at my primary school. So this is what he says, right? Now again, this is his voice. This is another voice. So this is the 13-year-old voice. And notice how calm it is, right? It's just like, don't you remember me? I've literally met you before. But of course they don't remember him at all, because maybe they don't see him as being that, or they've met many people, but they don't remember him. Fear condenses on your lips. So to condense is like the sweat of the situation, right? The fear and terror that these people have put into him. You remember that Wednesday after the assembly, your teacher speaking more about supernovas, how they are in fact dying stars on the verge of becoming black holes. Okay, notice here there is no end to the poem. So of course it's interesting because the supernova, and the teacher is correct. So the supernova is when a star grows so big that eventually it turns in on itself and becomes a black hole. So it is essentially almost like the it's the brightness before the end. Okay. Now what I like about this poem is there's a number of voices in here. Okay. So we've got the police officer. Okay. We've got the police officer, both the past that says you can be a supernova versus the present that says you fit the description of a man. So the way they treat him differently based on his age. You've also got the speaker. So you've got him as a child. Now we'll assume it's Caleb Femi, but it doesn't have to be. A child and a teen. But we've also got the poet. So we've really got, I would argue, we've got 5 voices. And what these voices are talking about is what happens to young black boys in society. When you're young, they teach you can be anything you want to be. You can be something great, achieve anything. You can be the supernova. But by the time you're 13 years old, they're pulling you over for no reason, accusing you of crimes you haven't committed, all on the basis that you were black. And it's super interesting because really the end of the poem points to this idea that they say that we can be this, but really this is all we can be, a black hole, right? What is a black hole? A black hole is a void. A black hole is a nothingness. A black hole destroys and consumes all. So I mean I see this as a really very negative poem. It argues that the system lies to you. The system says you can be something great, says you can achieve whatever you want to, but in reality the system is full of prejudice, bigotry, systemic racism. That means that no matter what you do, if you're a certain type of person, you will always be doomed to be nothing. One sec.